Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA Karen Reddit stories. In today's Ripe Stories video, an HOA president tried to fine me for a house that he had zero authority over. At first, I just laughed it off. But then he started stalking my yard, harassing my wife, and threatening my family. And what happened next turned the whole neighborhood against him. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, I tased an HOA member after they trespassed and threatened to harm my wife and kids. So a while back my wife and I bought a house in a really nice suburban area. We had been looking for a place for a long time because we wanted a good yard for our 2 kids and a quiet street. We found a property that checked all our boxes, and the interesting thing about this house was its location. It sat right at the entrance of a very large, very strict neighborhood that was governed by a homeowner association. However, our house and the 3 houses across the street from us were built years before that neighborhood was even developed. We were completely independent. Our deed had no mention of an HOA, we didn't pay dues, we didn't sign any agreements, we were just a normal private property that happened to share a property line with an HOA neighborhood. When we bought the house, the real estate agent made it very clear that we were not part of the association, and we were thrilled about that. We wanted the freedom to paint our front door whatever color we wanted and keep our trash cans on the side of the house without getting fined, and for the first few months everything was great. We moved in, set up our lives, and started enjoying our new home. But then we met the president of the HOA. I will not use his real name, so let's just call him the HOA guy. He lived a few streets deep into the neighborhood, but he treated the entire area, including our independent street, like he was the overlord. Our first interaction happened on a Saturday morning. I was in the driveway washing my truck, and my kids were drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. The HOA guy marched up my driveway. He didn't introduce himself or say hello. He just looked at my truck, looked at me, and started giving orders. He said, "You cannot wash your vehicle in the driveway. It is against community guidelines. Water runoff ruins the aesthetic of the street. You need to move it into the garage or take it to a commercial car wash." I was a bit taken aback by this. I stood up, wiped my hands on a towel, and tried to be polite to him. I told him I think he had the wrong house. I explained that we just moved in and we are not part of the HOA. But he scoffed at me. He looked at me like I was an idiot and he said, "Everyone on this street is in the HOA. Ignorance of their rules does not excuse you from them. I'm giving you a verbal warning today, but next time it will be a fine." And yeah, I kept my cool. I told him again very clearly that my property is not zoned for the HOA, and I told him to check his records. I even offered to show him my property paperwork, but he just waved his hand and walked away, muttering about new residents having no respect. I thought that would be the end of it. I figured he would go home, look at his map, realize his mistake, and leave us alone, but I was very wrong. That interaction was just the beginning of a relentless campaign of harassment. A few weeks later, I found a notice taped to my front door. It was a formal-looking document demanding that I remove the small plastic playhouse my kids had in the backyard. The notice claimed it was visible over the fence and violated the visual harmony of the neighborhood. It threatened a daily fine if it was not removed by the end of the week. I took the paper, crumpled it up, and threw it in the trash bin. I was not gonna play this game. I did not call him, I didn't argue, I just ignored it because he had zero legal authority over my property, but the HOA guy could not handle being ignored. He started escalating his behavior. He would walk his dog past our house every single day, stopping to take pictures of our yard. If my wife left the trash cans out for an extra hour after the garbage truck came, he would be out there taking photos. If I parked my truck slightly crooked in my own driveway, he would take photos. It was getting creepy. My wife started feeling uncomfortable being in the front yard, and she told me that she felt like she was being constantly watched or something. I decided I needed to put a stop to it. I went online and bought a high-quality security camera system. I installed cameras covering the front yard, the driveway, the backyard, and the sides of the house, and I made sure they recorded audio as well. I wanted a clear record of everything happening on my property, and the cameras paid off almost immediately. One afternoon I was at work and my wife was home with the kids. I got a motion alert on my phone from the driveway camera. I opened the app and saw the HOA guy standing right in the middle of my driveway. He was yelling at my wife. She was standing near the front porch, holding our youngest kid looking stressed, and I turned up the volume on my phone. The HOA guy was screaming about our landscaping. We had planted some small bushes near the mailbox that he apparently didn't approve of. He yelled, "You're bringing down the property value of the entire community. You people are a nuisance. I'm going to put a lien on your house if you don't rip those bushes out today." My wife, who is usually very shy, told him to leave our property, and she said, "We are not part of the HOA and he needs to go away." He took a step towards her and pointed his finger aggressively. "You don't tell me what to do. I run this neighborhood and I can make your life a living hell." I immediately called my wife on her cell phone. I saw her answer it on the camera. I told her to go inside, lock the door, and not engage with him anymore. She hurried inside with the kids, and the HOA guy stood in the driveway for another minute or so, glaring at the house before finally walking away. When I got home that evening, I was furious. I found the HOA guy's phone number online through the community website, so I called him. I kept my voice completely calm, but I made my boundaries crystal clear. I said, "Listen to me carefully. My house is not part of your HOA. You have absolutely no authority over my property, my landscaping, or my family. You came onto my property today and harassed my wife. If you ever step foot on my property again, I will consider it trespassing and I will defend my family. Don't contact us again. Do not come near my house again." Instead of apologizing or backing down, he laughed at me, a literal arrogant laugh, and he said, "You think you can intimidate me, huh? I have lawyers and retainer. I will bury you in legal fees until you are forced to sell that house. You will comply with the rules or I will force you out." I hung up the phone. There was no reasoning with this guy. He was completely delusional. He truly believed that his position as a volunteer board member of a neighborhood association gave him supreme power over the entire town. I called the non-emergency police line and filed a harassment report. The officer I spoke to was sympathetic, but said that since the HOA guy had not made a direct physical threat or committed a crime yet, there was not much they could do besides document the incident. The officer advised me to keep my cameras rolling and to call 911 if the guy came back and refused to leave. Things stayed quiet for about a month, and I thought maybe my phone call and the police report had finally gotten through to his thick skull. We went back to living our lives. The kids played in the yard, we enjoyed our weekends, and then came the day of the incident, the ultimate find-out moment. It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon and the weather was perfect. I was in the garage organizing my tools and the garage door was open. My wife was in the front yard sitting in a lawn chair, watching our kids ride their little tricycles up and down the driveway. It was a peaceful family day, but suddenly an ATV came speeding down the street. It swerved into my driveway and slammed on the brakes, stopping just a few feet away from where my kids were playing. It was the HOA guy. He jumped out of the ATV and he was absolutely livid. His face was red. He was holding a clipboard and a piece of paper, and he completely ignored me in the garage and marched straight towards my wife. "That is the last straw," he screamed. "I'm done playing games with you people." I dropped the wrench I was holding and walked out of the garage. I stepped between him and my wife. My kids stopped riding their tricycles and looked scared. My wife stood up and pulled the kids behind her. I looked at the guy and said, "I told you never to come on my property again. Leave right now." He shoved the piece of paper in my face. "You're painting your fence the wrong color. I saw the paint cans in your backyard. The color is not on the approved community palette. I'm shutting down your project right now." We were indeed planning to paint our backyard fence a dark gray color. It was a normal color, but apparently his HOA only allowed beige or white. I didn't even look at the paper. I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not in your HOA. I will paint my fence neon green if I want to. You are trespassing, so get off my property." He lost his mind. He threw the clipboard on the ground, he puffed out his chest and stepped right up to me, getting into my personal space. "You think you're so smart, huh?" He spat. "You think you can just do whatever you want, huh? I'm gonna make sure you lose everything. I'm going to have your car towed. I'm going to have the city condemn this house." I stayed perfectly calm and I didn't raise my voice at him. Although, guys, I do wish that maybe OP would have punched or slapped that guy in the face at least. By the way, if you would have been in this awful situation, how would you have dealt with this entitled trespassing HOA president? Let me know in the comments. I'm very curious about what you would have done. I just pointed down the driveway towards the street. "Leave now." And then he made the biggest mistake of his life. He looked past me, glaring at my wife and my 2 young kids who were huddled behind her. He pointed right at them and he said, "If you don't start following my rules, I will make sure your family pays for it. I'll come back here and teach your wife and those little brats a lesson in respect. You will not be safe here." The moment those words left his mouth, the entire situation changed. He was no longer just an annoying neighbor complaining about paint colors or something. He was a hostile intruder making a direct threat of physical harm to my family on my own property. He took a sudden aggressive step forward, trying to push past me to get to my wife, but I didn't hesitate. I always carry a taser for self-defense. It is legal where I live, and I'm fully trained on how to use it safely and effectively. I pulled it from my belt, aimed right at his center mass, and deployed it. The prongs hit him perfectly in the chest and stomach, and the HOA guy instantly went rigid. His arms locked up, his eyes went wide, and he tipped backwards like a felled tree. He hit the concrete driveway with a heavy thud and started groaning. I immediately stepped back, keeping my distance but keeping the taser pointed at him in case he tried to get up and attack again. I looked at my wife and said, "Call 911. Tell them that we have an intruder who threatened you and the kids, and I had to use a taser." My wife was already pulling her phone out of her pocket. She rushed the kids inside the house and locked the door, just like we had planned for emergencies. The HOA guy was rolling on the ground, holding his stomach, moaning and cursing. He was completely disoriented and out of breath. "You assaulted me," he gasped out. "I'm gonna sue you. I'm going to have you locked up." I didn't say a word to him. I just stood there, calm and silent, waiting for the police. I knew the cameras had caught everything. I knew I was completely in the right here. I was not gonna argue with a man lying on my driveway. Police cruisers pulled up to my house and 3 officers jumped out soon after this. The HOA guy saw the cops and immediately started putting on a performance. He tried to sit up, holding his chest, acting like he was mortally wounded or something. "Help me! Arrest him!" he yelled at the officers. "I was just trying to deliver a neighborhood notice and this maniac attacked me. He tried to kill me." The officers approached cautiously. One of them told me to put the taser on the ground and step back. I complied immediately. I placed the taser on the hood of my truck and backed away with my hands visible. I was completely cooperative here. Another officer went over to the HOA guy and started asking him if he needed an ambulance. The guy kept dramatically gasping for air, claiming I ambushed him for no reason. The lead officer walked over to me. He asked me what happened, and I spoke clearly and calmly. I said, "Officer, this man is the president of the neighboring HOA. My property is not part of the HOA. He's been harassing us for months. I've previously told him that he is banned from my property, but today he drove onto my driveway, trespassed, and started screaming at me. I told him to leave, but he refused. He then tried to push past me and explicitly threatened to physically harm my wife and my young children. When he lunged towards my family, I simply deployed my taser to stop the threat. My wife and kids are safe inside." The HOA guy heard me and started screaming from the ground. "He's lying, he's a liar, I never threatened anyone, I was just doing my job. Arrest him right now." The officer looked at me, then looked at the guy on the ground. "Do you have any proof of this?" the officer asked me, and I smiled. It was the most satisfying smile of my life. "Yes, sir," I said. "I have multiple high-definition security cameras covering this entire area, and they record video and audio. I can pull up the footage on my phone right now if you want." The color completely drained from the HOA guy's face, his dramatic moaning stopped instantly, and he suddenly looked very small and very panicked. I pulled out my phone, opened the app, and found the clip from the driveway camera. I handed the phone to the officer, and the officer watched the video. He watched the golf cart speed onto my property, and he watched the guy jump out and start screaming. He heard me tell the guy to leave, and he saw the guy refuse. And then, clear as day, the audio picked up the guy saying, "I will come back here and teach your wife and those little brats a lesson in respect." The video clearly showed him lunging forward aggressively before I deployed the taser. The officer handed my phone back to me and he didn't say a word to me. He just turned around and walked over to the HOA guy, who was now sitting up on the concrete looking nervous. "All right, sir," the officer said, his voice hard. "Stand up and put your hands behind your back." The HOA guy looked confused. "What? No, you're supposed to arrest him. He tased me." "He tased you in self-defense after you trespassed his property and threatened violence against his family," the officer replied. "We got it all on video. Stand up." The guy started panicking. He tried to backtrack. Wait, it was just a misunderstanding. I was just angry. I didn't mean it. You cannot arrest me. I'm the HOA president." "I don't care if you're the president of the United States," the officer said. "You are under arrest for trespassing and making terroristic threats." The officers hauled him to his feet, spun him around, and slapped the handcuffs on his wrists. The guy started actually crying, real tears. He was sobbing and begging the officers to let him go, saying his life was gonna be ruined, saying it was all a mistake. It was the ultimate display of a bully realizing that his actions finally had some consequences. He had spent years terrorizing people over grass length and paint colors, thinking he was untouchable, and now he was being stuffed into the back of a police cruiser in front of the entire neighborhood. Several of the actual HOA residents had come outside when they heard the commotion and the police sirens, and they were standing on the sidewalks watching their tyrannical president get arrested, but none of them looked upset. In fact, a few of them looked relieved. The police took my official statement and I provided a copy of the security footage and collected my taser as temporary evidence. They assured me I would get it back once the case was processed, and they told me I acted completely within my rights to protect my family from a credible threat on my own property. The fallout for the HOA guy was massive and absolute. Because he had made a threat of violence against a woman and children, the police took the charges very seriously. I filed for a permanent restraining order against him, and with the video evidence and the police report, the judge granted it without issues. The restraining order meant that he was legally forbidden from coming within 500 feet of me, my wife, my kids, or my property. Because his own house was located deep inside the neighborhood, he had to take a massive detour through a back entrance just to get to his own home without violating the distance rule, but it got even worse for him. The news of his arrest spread through the neighborhood instantly. The residents who had apparently been suffering under his ridiculous rules and fines for years saw an opportunity. They called an emergency meeting of the HOA board, and because he was facing criminal charges and had a restraining order against him from a neighboring property owner, the board voted unanimously to remove him from his position as president. They didn't just remove him, they kicked him off the board entirely. His legal troubles drained his bank accounts. He had to hire a criminal defense lawyer to deal with the trespassing and threat charges, and he tried to plead not guilty, but the video evidence was undeniable. He ended up having to take a plea deal that resulted in heavy fines and a long period of probation. We have lived here peacefully ever since. We painted our fence the dark gray color we wanted, and the kids play in the yard without anyone bothering them, and my wife feels safe and happy. And you know, guys, what really always irks me or kills me about HOA presidents like this is that they are always like the guy who peaked as a hall monitor in middle school, meaning they couldn't hack it in any real position of authority, so they then run for the one office that nobody else wants, HOA president, and suddenly they think they are commanding a small nation or something. They are literally budget Kim Jong-uns. And a user on Reddit said, NTA, and anyone here saying otherwise has never had a strange man pull up onto their property screaming at their kids. This unhinged man drove to your house specifically to terrorize your family on a Saturday afternoon. He was not a cop, he was not on his own property, he came to your home uninvited and threatened to teach your wife and kids a lesson. That is not just yelling about paint or something, that is a direct physical threat to a spouse and children. The taser only came out after he refused to leave and threatened them. And by the way, guys, let me know in the comments, would you have reacted the same way as OP? Would you have used the taser as well, or would you have handled this differently? Let me know what you think in the comments. And now a slightly more unhinged comment from Reddit. This person said, look, I hate HOAs as much as the next sane person, and this guy sounds like the poster child for why people despise them. I mean, showing up to harass a family, not even in their jurisdiction, while threatening kids is just unhinged behavior, and he absolutely deserved some kind of consequence for that. But you also clearly wanted this confrontation. You knew who he was the second he pulled up. You could have gone inside, you could have called the cops and let them deal with the trespassing lunatic, but instead you baited him into threatening your family so you could tase him and play hero on your own security cameras. He sucks more than you, obviously, but you still orchestrated this outcome, and your wife telling you she was terrified is a massive red flag about how safe she feels around you right now. Yeah, I don't really think I have any words for this stupid Reddit comment. And the next one is a funny story from r/malicious compliance and is titled, The memo said we must give a printed receipt for every library checkout, so I did, until we ran out of paper. So I work at a public library and most days are calm even when it's busy. Last month, someone higher up sent out a shiny new accountability memo that said every single checkout must include a printed receipt, no exceptions, no asking the patron, no email option unless they request it after you print. The memo literally said it reduces disputes issues, and if a patron refuses the paper, you still print it and discard it yourself for audit consistency. We all kind of rolled our eyes, but I decided fine, I will follow it exactly because I'm not getting blamed later. Well, the next Saturday, we had a line out the door, strollers, seniors, kids, just everyone, and I printed a receipt for every checkout even when people said no thanks. Let me tell you, I did not speed print either because the policies said to highlight due dates and verbally confirm them, so I did that too every single time. One guy checked out 47 items for a book club donation sort, so I printed 2 full pages of receipts, highlighted, confirmed everything and even stapled, and then put the duplicate copy in the audit tray, just like the instructions told us to do. Another patron asked why I was throwing paper straight into recycling, and I just said, "New rules, sorry." Because I was not gonna editorialize. By noon, we had burned through 2 rolls of thermal paper and the printer started doing that faint stripe thing, which means it's about to jam and needs a reboot, so I logged a supply request and kept printing anyway, because the memo didn't say to pause for common sense. The line got slower, people got cranky, and we ran out of paper completely, which meant we couldn't check anything out at all, because the receipt screen blocks the checkout until it prints. The fallout was immediate. The children's librarian had to cancel a storytime giveaway, and the whole shelf was overflowing, and the director got a call from the city office because someone complained that they drove 30 minutes and couldn't borrow books because the printer was empty. Monday morning, we get a follow-up email that receipts are now optional again and please be mindful of waste. I kept the original memo in my drawer just in case they forgot how we got here. And yeah guys, I hope you have a great day and I will see you again tomorrow.